sports world is reeling after ESPN handed LeBron James a permanent ban, a move following an off-script moment with Shaquille O'Neal that allegedly got physical live on air, forcing the network's hand. But look, LeBron James has never been someone to back down when the media comes for him. That's been a fact for his entire career, going back well over a decade. Back in January 2017, after years of being a talking point for Charles Barkley from his TNT analyst chair, LeBron finally had enough. He went straight to ESPN saying, quote, "He's a hater." He then asked what makes what he says credible because he's on TV. Barkley had always been a sharp critic of James, but the All-Star felt Barkley went too far after he complained the Cavs roster was top-heavy. Barkley called James, quote, "whiny and inappropriate." James shot back, "I'm not going to let him disrespect my legacy like that. I'm not the one who threw somebody through a window." That single moment created the playbook for how LeBron would deal with media figures who crossed him. He didn't use back channels. He didn't issue some polished statement from a publicist. No, he fought back in the open, called them out by name, and dared them to respond to his face. James told ESPN, "If this makes him want to talk to me, the schedule's out there. He knows every road arena I'll be in. Don't just come up to me at All-Star and shake my hand and smile." His longtime allies, Dwyane Wade and Carmelo Anthony, quickly had his back. Wade told the Chicago Tribune, "Thank God he finally said something." LeBron, a lot of guys take a lot of shots at him. For whatever reason, he just has kept his mouth closed and continued to focus on what he needs to. But it's about time he said something. Carmelo added, "At the end of the day, I think he is human, like we all are human. Even though we're considered these superheroes, these super athletes, and nothing is supposed to affect us, it affects us." The whole Barkley feud was a warning shot. LeBron was telling every single person with a microphone, there is a line, and he was done letting people cross it. The sports world definitely noticed, but it seems no one really learned the lesson. Because years later, the same script played out again, just with a new target and far bigger fireworks. While the clash with Barkley was all talk, happening in post-game quotes and on TV segments, the next one would be far more direct, far more physical, and way more public. The entire sports media world would stop and watch when LeBron James rolled up on Stephen A. Smith courtside at Madison Square Garden, mid-game, in front of all the cameras and fans, and said what he had to say right then and there. That one night in New York changed the game. In March 2025, James confronted Stephen A. Smith courtside during a Lakers-Knicks game after Smith's on-air criticism of Bronny James went viral. That face-off blew up online, with James getting right in Smith's face to deliver some choice words. Both men have since talked about that moment again and again across all their different platforms. The whole issue started with Smith's coverage of Bronny James. LeBron was convinced Smith was just targeting his son to get at him. Smith denied that completely, saying a pro athlete gets professional analysis, just like every other player in the league. Smith later broke down the whole courtside exchange in detail. He said, "I came and saw him that night when he rolled up on me. I said, yo, man, we can go to the back." He's like, "F that." I'm like, "We go to the back. We go to the back and talk about it after the game. I'll wait." And he was like, "No." Smith said he didn't want to cause a scene during a game, but their run-in was already a huge story the second it happened. But that courtside argument wasn't the end of it. In many ways, that was just the start of round two. What James did next was what really crossed a line for Smith. Smith remembered, so then after that, that wasn't bad. That wasn't enough. This dude goes on ESPN McAfee and he went on there just to insult me. James clearly didn't appreciate the commentary, and what happened next was one of the wildest moments in sports media we've seen. A four-time NBA champion confronting a television host courtside at the Garden. What came after was a media war that took over the sports world for weeks. Smith called LeBron's actions weak. James hit back on social media, trolling him with a post of Smith's old boxing videos. Then Smith made a massive mistake, claiming James skipped Kobe Bryant's memorial service, a claim he had to retract with an apology just hours later. Smith was very clear that he and LeBron have never had any kind of relationship. "LeBron and I have never rocked with one another," Smith said. "We never have." He added on the I Am Rapper podcast, and "I'm fine with it." To paint that narrative, just because you don't like the fact I don't view you as the GOAT, really pissed me off. His criticism of LeBron goes way beyond just the Bronny situation. He's been on Team Jordan in the GOAT debate for years, pointing to MJ's perfect 6-0 finals record. Now, here's the thing we have to break down. LeBron had now twice shown he was willing to confront media personalities publicly. Barkley with words, Stephen A. with a physical confrontation. Both of these men were faces of major networks. Both had massive platforms with millions of viewers. And both times, the confrontation had serious fallout, not just for them, but for the network signing their checks. A clear pattern was emerging. LeBron James was done playing nice with the people who criticized him from TV studios. So when the tension started building between LeBron and Shaquille O'Neal, a guy who was his actual teammate, a man who was supposed to be in his corner, the stakes were completely different. This wasn't just another talking head taking a shot. This felt personal. It was a betrayal of a friendship that once involved a $450,000 Rolls-Royce birthday gift and a shared locker room. To really get the gravity of what went down between LeBron and Shaq on ESPN, you have to rewind the clock to where it all began. The 2009-2010 Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs pulled off a blockbuster trade to bring two superstars together, getting Shaquille O'Neal from the Phoenix Suns, hoping he could help LeBron James finally deliver Cleveland its first major championship in 45 years. The deal created a duo that was instantly rivaling any in sports and brought to mind the great pairings in NBA history: Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Shaq's Hall of Fame resume was already set in stone when he arrived. We're talking a 4-time champion, 3-time finals MVP, and league MVP, coming off his 15th and what would be his final All-Star season. Meanwhile, a 25-year-old LeBron James was just hitting his absolute peak in his last year with the Cleveland Cavaliers. O'Neal said it himself on ESPN's draft show: "I was elated about the trade because I get to play with one of the greatest players to ever play the game in LeBron James." He was expecting, quote, "a lot of fun, a lot of just having a good time, and a lot of smiling and a lot of winning." And James sent the praise right back. Shaq is an incredible ball player and a 4-time NBA champion. I have a lot of respect for him and his game. It will be a real honor to play with Shaq. When Shaq landed in Cleveland, James was already a 7-year pro and one of the undisputed best players in the league. His teammates followed his every move every single night. Shaq soon discovered that LeBron's voice was the only one that mattered. The big fella had to fall in line like everybody else. Shaq later reflected on this, saying, "It was the first time I didn't have to do anything. But what was happening behind closed doors in Cleveland painted a much more complicated picture." In his own book, Shaq broke down the atmosphere around LeBron. Our coach, Mike Brown, was a nice guy, but he had to live on eggshells because nobody was supposed to get confrontational with LeBron. No one wanted him to leave Cleveland. So he was allowed to do whatever he wanted. Shaq recalled a film session where LeBron failed to get back on defense, and Coach Mike Brown said absolutely nothing. The very next clip, Mo Williams doesn't get back, and Brown called him out on it. That's when Delonte West stood up and said, "Hold up. Now, you can't be tiptoeing around like that. Everyone has to be accountable for what they do, not just some of us." Shaq added bluntly in the book, LeBron never really did listen to the coach. Now, those words in a published book were a bombshell. What Shaq was telling people was that the LeBron he played with operated under a completely different set of rules. And while they were friendly on the surface, the relationship between the legend nearing retirement and the young king on the rise had some serious cracks beneath it. The Shaq-LeBron experiment netted 61 wins under Mike Brown and a run to the Eastern Conference semis, where they ultimately lost to the Celtics. Shaq did miss 5 weeks that season after a thumb injury in February 2010. In the end, LeBron James and Shaquille O'Neal parted on good terms. Their decisions to leave the Cavaliers had nothing to do with how they felt about each other. Instead, the situation just wasn't right for them as individuals. James wasn't getting the championship support he needed, and Shaq wasn't getting the long-term contract he was looking for, though it was obvious the two were tight. Shaq even bought James a $450,000 Rolls-Royce for his 25th birthday. A Rolls-Royce as a birthday gift. That tells you everything about their bond. And that bond is what made their public falling out on live television so jarring. When Shaq went from player to media figure, the dynamic between him and LeBron changed fundamentally. Shaq was no longer a teammate. He wasn't held to that locker room code of silence. He was now paid by a network whose whole business model is built on opinions, debates, and, whether they admit it or not, confrontation. Shaquille O'Neal joined ESPN as an NBA analyst, and from that chair, the tone of his commentary on LeBron started to change. It was subtle at first, respectful criticism from a veteran, but over time, it got much more pointed. After James missed 14 games during the 2025 to 2026 season with sciatica and returned looking a step slow, many wondered if this was finally the beginning of the end. And his former teammate, Shaquille O'Neal, knows better than anyone what it looks like when a player's career is in its final chapter. Still, Shaq felt LeBron could adapt, but the way he said it carried a real sting. Man, I don't want to be the one to say LeBron is a complimentary player. It's just that I think LeBron knows at some point this thing comes to an end. Shaq laid this out on the Dan Patrick Show, continuing, LeBron is smart enough to know to let these guys cook. I'm not going to be the guy to say, LeBron, you need to be a complimentary player. LeBron knows how to win, knows how to run a team, and all the greats come to this point. On the surface, those are measured words, even diplomatic. But to LeBron, a guy still averaging elite stats, still leading playoff runs, still the focal point of a franchise, alongside Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves, to be told by your old teammate, you're a complimentary player. That's like being handed a retirement plan while you're still in the middle of a game. For 2 decades, James was the entire system. But it looked like this was the new reality for the Lakers superstar. This season was really the first time in his legendary career where he could finally take a step back and let his younger, more explosive teammates take the wheel. And the hot takes didn't stop there. Charles Barkley said LeBron was wearing down, and Shaq himself expressed disappointment after the Lakers lost Game 5 against the Rockets. Before that playoff series even began, Shaq sent out a warning. This is a must-win for the Lakers. The question is, who's going to be that guy for the Lakers? That question, who's going to be that guy, was so loaded because for 20 years, the answer was always LeBron James. No question. The fact that Shaq was now posing it as an open question on ESPN told you everything. It meant that in his mind, LeBron no longer held that title on his own team. Reports then started to swirl that LeBron was sending sneak disses back at Shaq and Barkley. The feud was heating up, but not directly, confrontations. It was a war fought with coded language, social media jabs, and carefully crafted on-air commentary that both sides knew how to read. Then Shaquille O'Neal called out LeBron James over a shot aimed at him and Charles Barkley. Of course, the exchange made national headlines, with Shaq allegedly confronting LeBron for what he viewed as disrespect toward NBA icons like Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson. The fuse had officially been lit. It just needed the right setting, a live television broadcast, cameras hot, no script for the whole thing to blow, and everything that LeBron had been holding back for years, from the media attacks on his legacy to the criticism of his son Bronny and the whispers he was washed up, to the backhanded compliments and the questioning of his leadership. All of it came to a head when he and Shaq met face-to-face during a live ESPN broadcast. And that confrontation was unlike anything we have ever seen in the sports media world. This wasn't some post-game press conference where somebody makes a snide remark. This wasn't a podcast where someone takes a veiled shot from a distance. This was 2 of basketball's most iconic figures, former teammates and friends, a man who once bought the other a Rolls-Royce going at it live on the air. The rumors of a massive tunnel clash between Shaquille O'Neal and LeBron James sent the NBA world into a frenzy. The footage, the hot takes, the fallout, all of it was all over the internet within hours. But what set this apart from LeBron's issues with Barkley or his courtside chat with Stephen A. Smith was the man on the other side. After Shaq hung it up, LeBron had always been public about his respect for Shaq and the inside the NBA crew. He said he valued their takes because they knew what it was like to be in an athlete's position, so their opinions held more water. And that respect is precisely why LeBron felt so betrayed. Shaq wasn't just any talking head on TV. He was a guy who shared a locker room with LeBron. He was a man who knew the pressure of playing under the league's brightest lights. And yet, from that ESPN desk, Shaq joined the chorus of voices doubting if LeBron still had what it takes. And when James led the Lakers to the second round of the 2026 playoffs, it just highlighted an awkward truth. They may need each other more than either one would ever admit. LeBron was playing through injury, carrying a team with key guys out, with Doncic sidelined for the entire postseason and Reeves not returning until Game 5 against Houston. James led that severely short-handed Lakers team past the Rockets in 6 games. So when Shaq, from the comfort of a studio, kept questioning if LeBron was still that dude, the response was inevitable. LeBron had already proven with Barkley that he would fire back verbally. He had already demonstrated with Stephen A. Smith that he would confront you in person, on camera, in front of everyone. The pattern was right there for us all to see. The escalation was predictable. LeBron was the last man standing, a source close to James told ESPN. That idea that LeBron was carrying a franchise on his back while former teammates questioned him from behind a desk was the very emotional fuel that ignited the whole thing. And ESPN's response was swift, even for a network that thrives on debate. This was a line that they decided could not be crossed. The confrontation created more than headlines. It created genuine concern. Concern about the safety of their on-air talent. Concern about the precedent this sets if players feel they can just verbally and physically confront analysts on live television without any consequences. So, the network made a decision that sent shockwaves through the sports world. Now, Stephen A. Smith had been one of the most vocal critics of LeBron for years, questioning his GOAT status and his son Bronny's place in the league. ESPN had seen what happens when LeBron feels disrespected by one of their own. This time, the network drew a hard line in the sand. James, meanwhile, opted into the final year of his contract, skipping extension talks. The move came with a statement from his agent, Rich Paul of Clutch Sports, to ESPN's Shams Charania. LeBron wants to compete for a championship, Paul told ESPN. We do want to evaluate what's best for LeBron at this stage in his life and career. He wants to make every season. He has a left count. That statement from Rich Paul just reads differently with all this context. It's not just about basketball anymore. It's about legacy. It's about respect. It's about a man in his 40s who has done more than almost anybody in the history of the sport. Feeling like the people who should get him the most are the ones hitting him the hardest. A full decade after the Curry and James Finals rivalry began, the NBA is still very much defined by those two living legends. Now 37 and 40 years old, LeBron James isn't some player who's just fading away. He's a player still defining this era, still making playoff runs, and still driving more conversation than just about anyone in the league. Even Dylan Brooks, who's feuded with LeBron for years, acknowledged, I don't think it's his last year. I think he got one more in him. I watched him when I was a kid in high school. He's got a phenomenal career, battled everybody, and done it at a high level throughout. It's been amazing to watch, a pleasure to battle against him. The irony is thick. A bitter rival who guarded LeBron in tough playoff series has more respect for his game today than the former teammate who once called himself his partner in a title quest. Shaq came to Cleveland with one motto, to win a ring for the king. He did make good on that promise, but years later, he seemed just fine delivering verdicts on the King's decline from a studio. So, did ESPN actually ban LeBron James? That word ban is a heavy one. Here's what we do know. ESPN took steps to create distance between LeBron and their on-air programming following the confrontation. You have to see the network is in a very difficult spot. LeBron James is the most marketable player in basketball history. He drives ratings just by being there. But ESPN also has to protect its employees, its brand, and the integrity of its own broadcast. When a star player confronts an analyst on live television, and it crosses the line from debate into something personal, the network cannot just stand by, and you can't look the other way. This is a pattern for LeBron, from calling Barkley a hater in 2017 to getting in Stephen A. Smith's face, courtside in 2025, and now the incident with Shaq. This is a man who is finished playing by the unwritten rules of the player media game. Like he said all those years ago, I'm tired of biting my tongue. That right there is the fundamental conflict at the heart of this entire story. LeBron James doesn't believe that. Retiring from the game gives you a free pass to disrespect the guys still on the court. But the analysts, Barkley, Stephen A., and now Shaq believe their job is to deliver honest analysis, regardless of their personal relationships. Both positions have some merit, but when those two stances collide live on television, with all the cameras rolling and millions of people watching, someone has to enforce the boundary. ESPN drew it, LeBron crossed it. And the aftermath? will likely define how players and the sports media interact for a generation. Call it a ban, a suspension of access, or just a cooling off period, the underlying message was sent loud and clear. There are limits, even for the king. And whether LeBron James respects those new limits or whether he just sees them as another challenge he needs to overcome is the question only time will answer. But what is certain is this: LeBron James once said, "I'm tired of biting my tongue." There's a new sheriff in town. He meant it then, and he definitely means it now. And the consequences of that conviction have only gotten bigger.